I want to welcome you guys back. So I figured in the spirit of Hanukkah and the fact that it's known for incredible miracles, I would share with you guys a story from a long, long time ago. When I was a teenager, an incredible thing happened to me, and I think it's time for me to share it. A lot of my friends, the people around me, are aware of the story, but other than that, it's an unreal story. So basically, when I was younger, we were hanging out. We were at a bar in Jerusalem, in Israel, and we were drinking, and what happened was that it was my friend's birthday, and so we're having a couple of extra drinks, not that we needed an excuse, but we were. I went outside, and somehow I ended up getting into a fight with somebody, which wasn't very hard to do in those days. It's a little bit different than nowadays. In those days, you had an issue, especially when you were abroad. You had it out, you solved it, and you moved it on. Anyways, I'm about to square off with this guy, and my friend turns his back, and he sees that we're about to get into a fight, and he jumps in the middle, and he fights with the guy. So, being that in those days, things were a little bit more gentlemanly, I had to stay back because it wasn't fair to have a 2-on-1. So, I stood back. But luckily, I was drunk, so everything was happening in slow motion. And while my friend was fighting with this guy, the guy grabs a mug of beer, and he swings it at my friend's face. And halfway through the swing, I grab the mug. The guy holds on to the handle, and the mug pops off the handle, and it splits my finger clear down the middle. Now, basically, a whole brawl, a whole fight ensued. It was pretty wild and crazy, but the ambulance, they came for me, and I got taken to the hospital. I'm sitting there on a hospital bed. I remember they gave me a bowl, and the blood is dripping and dripping and dripping. Nobody's coming to help me out. All of a sudden, the blood leaks over the bowl. They didn't empty the bowl in time. They took me in. And I still believe until today they took me in because they didn't want to stay in the sheets. In those days, we considered Israel a third world country. Maybe it was a second world country. Certainly isn't on the level that it is today. Anyways, the doctor says, first they said to me, we're going to have to give you a shot first before we do, the work. So I said, I'm not really so comfortable in shots. I was kind of uncomfortable about shots in those days. He goes, don't worry. Anyways, they give me the shot, and they're like, we have some bad news. I'm like, why? It's okay. It was fine. You did a good job. They're like, no, we got the wrong arm. I don't know what that means, but they had to give me the shot again. Anyways, the doctor says he has to remove my finger. I said, heck no. Do what you got to do. He goes, you don't understand. It's infected, this, that, whatever. I go, you ain't taking my finger. I've heard stories like this, where people wrote with markers on their arm, wrong arm, doc, because, sometimes they operate on the wrong arm. So, people write with markers on the other arm. Anyways, I said, stitch it up. Don't you worry about me. He's like, all right, but it's a mistake. He stitches it up. For the next little while, I'm like doing push-ups on it. I can barely move it. I can move it like this much. And at night, I'm sleeping with my hand up just so that the blood doesn't flow to it. It was incredible. It was a very painful scenario. People were making fun of me. They said maybe I gave the middle finger to the wrong person because I'm walking around with a bandage that was bigger than my whole hand. Anyways, one day, in the midst of all this, I go upstairs to hang out with a couple of friends of mine. I'm sitting there with my friend Brett. He has his friend Danny over. This is a guy I knew, but he was a close friend of Brett's. And he starts telling him about this rabbi from the old city. I'm going to leave names out. And he says, this rabbi is so holy that when he walks, he keeps a tallis. That's a Jewish article, the white article that Jews wear. And he keeps it over his head when he walks through the street, which is customarily something we only do during prayers. But he keeps it over his head to keep the holiness in and the impurity out. So I said, isn't that a little arrogant? Which I still feel uncomfortable saying even till today. As I said that, all of a sudden I saw stars and flashes of night lights, and it just, everything became uncomfortable. I felt heat all the way down to my legs. And Danny, the guy who was telling the story, he jumps over the table and he goes, "Don't talk like that." And I go, "Whoa, calm down. What are you doing?" And like, sort of like I'm snapping back into reality. He goes, "Don't do what?" I go, "Why'd you just jump and yell at me?" He goes, "I didn't jump and yell at you." I go, "What do you mean? You just yelled at me not to speak that way about such a holy man." He goes, "Uh-oh, I think we have a problem here." I go, "Yeah, I'm not feeling right at all. I'm seeing stars. Everything seems trippy. I feel heat, a lot of heat. And the entire night, I felt, this was like 9, 10 p.m. I felt a lot of heat in the bottom by my legs. This rabbi was famous when people would say derogatory things or do things that he didn't believe in, they would suffer. Like he was in a boys' school, and there was a very religious Orthodox Jewish school, and there was a man who wanted to build a girls' school next door, and he told him not to, and he started building, and then the man became paralyzed, and then he canceled the building, and he became unparalyzed. Another person wrote an article about him in a newspaper, and then same thing happened. Then we removed it. So we're talking about a very holy man, and so excuse me, got a cold, probably like most people. Anyway, so what happened was this guy, Danny, he takes me and Brett, and we go to this other rabbi because it's late at night. We don't want to disturb this holy rabbi, but we knew it was important enough, so we went to his principal, who's also from that school, but a little bit lower on the totem pole. And he's telling him the whole story in Hebrew. I didn't really understand Hebrew that well in those days. And the rabbi's smiling at me. And as we walk away, I go, "He was smiling. You look pretty calm. I'm okay, right?" He goes, "No." He said, "You better not go to sleep tonight without asking for permission." And like I said, I felt so weird, like I was tripping, like, and it was just such a strange feeling. And so we went over to this rabbi's house, and my other friend, Brett, he goes, "I think Ari should knock on the door." And Danny goes, "What's the nonsense? Let's go upstairs. We'll knock on the door." And that's it. So we go up, and Danny's knocking and knocking and knocking and knocking. No answer. We're outside. We don't know what to do. Brett's like, "I think Ari should knock on the door." All right. Foolishness, but let's try it. I go back upstairs, and I knock on the door. As my knuckle touches the door, I hear, "Miza, who's there?" on the other side of the door. So I muster up the little Hebrew I know. "Is it okay if I can come in to talk to you for a moment?" He welcomes me in, and I go and sit down, and I knew I was in the presence of holiness. I mean, there was a glow. It was something I'd never seen in my life. So anyways, as I was saying, even with finger push-ups, I couldn't get my finger to bend more than that. So I told the rabbi the whole story. I asked him for forgiveness. Of course, he said, "I forgive you right away." The heat that was going to my legs, everything felt better. And then I asked him, I said, "Do you mind if I speak in English?" He said, "Of course." I said, "Since I'm here already, can I get a blessing? I was in a situation, I hurt my finger, and I'm nervous. They want to remove the finger. Now they're telling me I'm never going to be able to move my finger again. Meanwhile, I'm having a hard time." So he says to me, "I bless you." And as he says it, my hands go together, and my finger presses my other finger. Until today, I can't get it all the way, but it closes it till there. And I'm looking down, and I start tearing. And then I just try on its own, and I close it to that point. And I'm like, "Thank you," but like I couldn't even really get the words out because I was so speechless. And he smiles. He's someone who is clearly used to miracles. And I'm on my way. I go downstairs. Brett and Danny are down there. And I'm crying, like I'm tearing. And we were really tough guys. I mean, we were really tough. And I'm tearing. I come down, and Danny and Brett are sitting there. And they go, What's going on? Why are you acting like this? What's wrong with you?" So I show them. I mean, it was the talk of the town what happened to my hand. I show my hand, and I go like that. and they both start bawling. The three of us just sitting there on the floor in the side of the Jewish quarter, just like completely blown away by what took place. Sure enough, I go back to the doctor. They're like, you know, blown away. Wow, you know, you can keep your finger, and amazing that it's, you know, that you can bend it and all this stuff. But this was just something really, really unbelievable, and it had an impression not only on me and my friends, but it became like the talk of everybody. I mean, I would go through town, and like for a good while afterwards, everybody was like, wow, is it really true? Can I see? And like I said, even until today, I'm afraid to say that initial statement. Isn't that a little arrogant? But one thing I learned, I feel the heat now as I say it, one thing I learned from that experience that I've carried until today is that you really have to be careful what you say and who you say it about. You can't just go around throwing statements around. You have to take responsibility, not only for your actions, but also for your words. But on the other hand, I'm very, very thankful that this happened to me, because it's something that I've gotten to carry with me now for a little less than 30 years and will carry for the rest of my life. And I wanted to share my story with you. I'm trying to think if there was any other loose ends that happened, but that was pretty much it. It was a crazy scenario that all tied together and all came together to make one story. That's just unbelievable. Thanks for listening. I'm glad I could share it with you. Take care.